After a month of not reading Berserk, we are starting at the second half of Volume 3, where we left off, and it's the beginning of the Golden Age. First chapter begins with a tree full of corpses, and from one of these corpses, a small fetus makes its way out of its dead mother, falling into a puddle of blood. While the baby was lying unconscious, a band of mercenaries was passing by, and the woman of one of these mercenaries spots the child and picks it up. This particular woman was something like a wife to the leader of the group, and she recently had a miscarriage, so this child was like a replacement for her. Though the leader of the group didn't want to let her keep the dead child around, so he pulls her by the hand, making her drop the baby, and when the baby once again fell into one of these puddles, he shocked everyone and started crying. Everyone was baffled at how did a newborn manage to survive in a hellscape like this. But nonetheless, when they all saw the baby was still alive, the leader Gambino allowed his wife to keep the kid, even though keeping a battlefield child was a bad omen. 3 years later, Shisu, the mother of the kid, now named Guts, gets infected with the plague and dies, leaving Guts to live with his so-called father. Once again, 3 years later, at the age of 6, Guts is forced to participate in a battle. Though he was not fighting, he still gets beaten pretty badly by his father for not being fast enough. After the battle, we get to see Guts having a practice fight with Gambino, and even though Guts is only 6 years old at this point, Gambino is not going easy on him. And when Guts finally manages to get a cut on Gambino, he freaks out and cuts Guts' nose all the way to the bone, for which even his own men tell him that is going too far. Once again, we get a time skip, 3 years into the future, where for the first time Guts is actively participating in a battle. Here he scores his first kill, after which he immediately almost gets killed, but is luckily saved by Gambino. And after the battle, he earns his first pay that he immediately gives to Gambino, and for the first time in his life he gets praised from his father. But this is quickly dismissed because that night Gambino sells his adopted son's body to a freak named Donovan. Later that night, this freak goes into Guts' tent, attacks him. Guts tries to defend himself, but a 9-year-old can't do a lot against a giant fat bastard like this. And that night, Guts is, well, I can't say the word, but imagine a grape, but without the G. Next day, while going to battle, Guts takes a glimpse at the man who did unspeakable things to him, and while in the battle, Guts sneaks behind this man, shooting him once in the chest from behind, and then the second time directly into his mouth, after which the man falls off his horse and gets rightfully killed even though he deserved much worse. But let's get back to the battle. In the middle of the attack, everything seems to be as normal as it can be, but one cannon shot later, Gambino is injured and almost dies in the battle. When they return from the battle, we see Guts standing in his father's room, recalling the past times with him. In here, we also get to see a bit of Gambino's soft side, as he calls out for his wife's name, being scared for her life, and even Guts is weirded out by this, saying, "That ain't you, it don't sound like you at all." 2 years later, Guts is 11 years old and still fighting on the battlefield, getting more skilled at killing, and this particular battle, he manages to kill the general, earning him more money than usual. He immediately runs to Gambino, excitedly telling him about the money he made, but instead of being praised, he is hit with a stick and told off. And for this reason, even his own men start losing respect for their leader. And later that night, Gambino comes to Guts' room, drunk and crazy, wielding a sword, wanting to kill him. He starts blaming Guts for all that has happened in his life. He blames him for Shisu's death, he blames him for his injuries, and also for him going crazy. He tells Guts that he should have just let him die beneath his mother's corpse 11 years ago. Then they start fighting, and Guts is fighting only defensively because he doesn't have the strength to kill his own father, until Gambino tells him that he sold Guts' body to Donovan the night after his first battle, which finally gives Guts the strength to kill Gambino by stabbing him through the neck. In their fight, they pushed over a lantern which set fire to the tents, alerting the guards in the camp. When the guards come, they attack Guts for killing Gambino, but he manages to dodge every attack and gets out of the tent. Then he steals a horse and tries to escape the mercenaries, but they catch up to him, shoot him in the shoulder, knocking him off his horse and off the cliff. By some miracle, he manages to survive, and this badly wounded, he catches the attention of another group of mercenaries, which takes him in and uses him as a soldier. So once again he's back to his normal life on the battlefield, and this time he is invading a castle. They get inside the walls and are quickly stopped by this giant man called Bazuso. All the men in Guts' unit stop in front of this man, being too afraid to attack because this man is like a legend. He fought 30 men alone and killed them all. But of course Guts isn't afraid of him and comes to face him. They start fighting and everyone is surprised at how fast Guts is with that big of a sword. The battle didn't take too long, and to us readers it was no surprise that Guts won. After Guts puts an end to the only wall that was stopping their attack, the castle was swiftly taken down. After the battle, the general that was leading this attack is impressed by Guts and offers him a place in his army, safe from all the dangers, but Guts refuses, and when the general tries to stop Guts, he snaps back at him, clearly showing signs of trauma from his childhood. While he's returning to his camp, he's spotted by the surviving members of the castle that they just finished attacking. The group of men is being led by none other than Griffith. A small group of these men attack Guts but get destroyed in the process, which forces Griffith himself to go there and confront Guts himself. They start fighting, but it was a one-sided battle in Griffith's favor, and he finishes Guts off in one strike. After the fight, we see Guts dreaming, or rather having a nightmare of his traumas. He sees his dead father, his dead mother, and worst of them all, Donovan. But at least it does end with a nice dream of Casca sleeping next to him. He wakes up in pain and wanders outside, being greeted by the familiar sight of mercenaries. He immediately notices Griffith and Casca talking. The girl also notices him, but instead of being glad he's alive, she punches him and tells him she wished he died in the fight with Griffith. We immediately find out why she feels this way. Griffith ordered her to sleep with Guts for 2 nights to keep his body temperature up since he lost too much blood. In the middle of this conversation, Griffith walks up to Guts and introduces himself, after which he asks Guts to accompany him. They go to a nearby hill, where Guts asks Griffith why did he miss his heart and why didn't he kill him, to which Griffith responds, "Because I want you, Guts." And to this, Guts has a reasonable reaction, asking Griffith if he's homo. But that's not the case. He was fascinated by Guts' fighting style, how he doesn't budge in front of danger and always gambles his life. For this reason, Griffith wants Guts. But Guts is not one to obey, so instead he challenges Griffith to a duel. If Guts wins, he will kill Griffith, and if Griffith wins, he will become one of his soldiers. Griffith accepts this duel with no hesitation, and the battle immediately starts. It's clear that Griffith has the upper hand, seeing as he's the more skilled one out of the two. Plus, Guts is still injured from the last battle. At one point, it seems that Griffith has won, but Guts grabs his sword with his teeth, an attack that even surprised Griffith. Both of them end up on the ground, but Guts has the upper hand at this point, managing to get a couple of punches on Griffith, but not for too long, because on his next punch, Griffith grabs his arm and swiftly dislocates Guts' shoulder, giving him the win in this match. After the match ended, Griffith's men rush in to congratulate him on his win, and since of this point, Guts belongs to Griffith and becomes a member of the Hawks. This frame is also very interesting to me, since the first thing I saw were Griffith's ears. From this, I believe Griffith might be an elf, which could explain his more feminine look, yet extremely strong body. Not too long after Guts joins the Hawks, they have their first raid. Here Guts is giving his first order. A lot of Griffith's men are surprised because the job that is given to Guts is basically going 1v100, so the risk of death is high. But still, it's an order that Guts has to obey. Griffith and his troops sneak to the back of the enemy camp and begin their assault. As Griffith's group slaughters and burns the enemy camp, as expected, a bunch of enemies manage to escape, heading straight to Guts. And this is where the 4th volume ends. This time, I only wrote down one thing. Griffith might be an elf. And that's it for this video. See you all in the next one.